Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this Friday morning over here as we wrap up this week. I'm still dealing with some sort of cold, flu, whatever the hell it is. I don't fucking like it. It's really, really annoying right now, but there are more important things to be focused on, of which that is the last 24 hours price action. CPI data was released. Bitcoin hit the bottom end of our lower boundary and now bouncing up as we were looking for yesterday. So without further ado, I'd like to jump on into the charts. But before then, I would like to let you know, or subtly show at least, my Instagram, of which I've been posting a lot of Bitcoin trading and travel related content there. There is a link in the description below. And then also Bybit still has their promotion going on for 0% fees, of which you can find that promotion in the link in the description below as well. All right, sweet. So let's just jump right on into it. This is what we were looking at yesterday, or well, the BBWP was what we were looking at yesterday. Yes, our volatility indicator right here was on extreme lows, which was giving us a bias that Bitcoin was likely to play out a range move alongside stochastic momentum oscillators, which were pointed to the downside direction, which was giving us a buy somewhere in the mid to low $18,000 region. We got that move, obviously, and then Bitcoin bounces alongside all major markets, bouncing up rather significantly here in the early morning hours. So what essentially does that mean? Well, we are looking at, first and foremost, on the extremely low term timeframes right here, a pivot at 19,200 based off of yesterday's video, just these prior short-term timeframe range highs, any sort of a closure above there on an hourly timeframe or above, and that would beget continuation towards our prior medium-term timeframe breakdown regions, which was about 19,750 or so. Then I did say that the first major warning flag that Bitcoin might be reversing would be with any sort of a medium-term timeframe closure above 19,750. We've actually gotten that in the early morning hours here. And so the biases do start to switch around a little bit, but this is really going to be contingent upon the higher term time frame look, of which actually several things have actually changed there, which is really, really interesting as of right now, especially as we get to the end of this week. But ultimately, I do want to say that any sort of a short-term time frame pullback, first and foremost, that fails to go below the prior breakout region, 19.4, then I would be looking at that as irrelevant, meaning that there is no talk of like this being a trap, at least for right now, as long as Bitcoin's above that pivot. Again, 19,400 on a 4-hour closing basis. If that does get violated, violate's a good word. I probably would be looking for a return back below 19,000 bucks. Probably that is going to be the move, if it will. But I like to see things in real time if that were indeed to happen. All right, sweet. So where was I as I referenced my notes over here? Yes. All right. So the LARP lines, funnily enough, have kind of played out right here. They're not like intended to be a one-to-one representation of price action, but in this case, actually worked pretty damn well, funnily enough. I did want to reference now short-term and medium-term timeframe stochastic momentum. So again, coming at this from the perspective that as long as Bitcoin's above about 19,400, any sort of a pullback that fails to get below there is just that, a pullback, not a trap. So where are momentum pivots as of right now? So keep these numbers in mind. The 12-hour time frame, so the upper end of the medium-term time frames right here, showing 18,100. As long as Bitcoin's above there, the next period does show momentum to the upside. 6-hour time frame, also momentum to the upside as long as Bitcoin's above 18,500. The 4-hour time frame also showing upside momentum as long as Bitcoin's above 18,550. This one's starting to get more in a critical region, to be fair. And then the hourly time frame should be down. Indeed it is, after hitting extremes right here, and will be showing downside pressure as long as Bitcoin's below 19,930. So what does that equate to? Short-term time frames very likely ebb and flow here, play out a little bit of a short-term pullback. The question is, does Bitcoin violate 19,400 or not on a closing basis? If it does, then this is probably a trap and probably does head on lower. But until then, I just look at it as a pullback. And the real interest is, of course, on the higher term time frame analysis, of which several things have changed here, or at least they are in the process of changing, I should say. And that, as we start off with this chart right here, is going to be the volatility versus stochastic momentum chart. So this chart, I should first and foremost explain for the millionth and first time. And the volatility component of this is represented by this indicator, the BBWP indicator. Anytime that we have seen it get to extreme lows, the expansion phase from these extreme lows for the full history of CME, so going all the way back for the past 4 to 5 years now, has led to an average move of about 24.25% over the course of about 2.5 weeks. And the stochastic oscillator has been correct in getting that direction 83.33% of the time. I want to reiterate here, when we're talking about statistics, we're not talking about certainties. There's no such thing as that, at least as far as I'm concerned, or at least as far as I've learned in my own trading history. If you do happen to know certainties, definitely let me know, because I'd be very, very interested in that. Until then, this is the best that I got. So what are we looking at as of right now? Well, we have yet to see the full-on signal confirmed, which is done by what? The volatility actually fully expanding. So how would we actually confirm that? Well, we need to see a couple things. We need to see, one, the BBWP indicator above the moving average with a positive slope. Right now, that is actually quite literally the opposite. It is below, both with a negative slope, and then also need to see BBWP above the 10 percentile mark right here. Once we get those two things, that is signal confirmed, and then we go reference the stochastic oscillator's direction, and that is what gives the highly probable direction for the next, about 25-ish% move on average. We could even take a first standard deviation of these, of these measurements, and that would represent a range between about 15% all the way up to 33.33%. So rather significant, I would say, and that can obviously bleed on into higher term timeframes as well. As of right now, the daily momentum pivot is at 19,500. That is to say that if Bitcoin closes above there today on the daily for CME, then we will see the daily stochastic switch to the upside, and probabilities will be higher for upside continuation than downside in this case. Here's the thing though, until this component, the volatility component, fully confirms that signal, it's neither here nor there. It's a potential, but not actionable, at least the way that I look at things. And you've seen this several times in the past couple of weeks here, because just as of yesterday and the day before that, and basically the week before that, daily stochastic momentum was pointed to the downside. So it's like, we have a potential here, but it is not confirmed. So this is why it's very, 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 very important to be patient. And, when we're talking about a signal that, could be 20+%, I would hope that it's easier to be patient in this case. With that in mind, as long as Bitcoin again is today above 19,500, well, coming into next week would actually start to look probably pretty good for potential continuation to the upside, that is. And so then we can pull these numbers over here. So I'm going to take both ends of the first standard deviation and then also the average move and just come up with some areas of interest. So if we were to go for the lower end of the first standard deviation, well, 15% puts you at about $21,500 or so. So that'd be an area of interest to the upside on the lower end. Pretty fucking good, dare I say. 24% is basically the average, and that'd put Bitcoin at about 23 to 23.5, and 33% puts Bitcoin basically around the summer highs at $25,000. Again, we're making a major assumption here that it actually does cross the upside today. And then, of course, we still need to see this actually fire off the full-on signal as well. But, just like before, it's just more relevant as long as it's in that positioning, of course. Anyways, other than that, as we do come into the weekly closure here for CME, it should also be known, do we want to get in this chart? Do we not want to get in this chart? This chart is basically the same signal as what we just looked at before, just different volatility component, and it's on a 2-day time frame, so it has a greater, average move. Obviously, it's like 39.5% versus like 24%. We don't need to get into that today. I'll probably save that for the weekend. But what I do want to get into is that because the weekly is closing today for CME, the weekly stochastic oscillator is going to have a chance to do a couple of things here. First and foremost, it'll have a chance to cross the upside and get above the moving average on it right here. That will officially occur above 19,140. Not only will it be able to do that, but it'll also be able to potentially break this trendline regression here coming off of the highs in November. Literally the momentum highs of the all-time high in November of 2021. So I thought that was rather interesting as well. So if it were to do those two things, that would also be further confluence that we're probably looking at a greater bounce here first before anything else. Could it be a major low? Maybe. Could it be a macro low? I mean, I guess it's still possible until it isn't. It's not very helpful, I guess, but that is the way that the cookie crumbles sometimes, ain't it? But ultimately, it would increase the likelihood that we do see at least another major rally here before anything else, potentially even a macro low, although I do still kind of hold my reservations with that. So going back on over here, kind of wrapping up this talk, short term, Bitcoin probably pulls back. I mean, it is already pulling back a little bit right here. So that is what it is. But any sort of a pullback that fails to close below about 19,400, I just look at that as a pullback. If it does close below 19,400, probably looking at a trap with moves back down below 19, probably back down around what we saw yesterday. And what else? And then yes, the big focus is of course on this chart over here as the probabilities twist and turn around. Still, however, waiting for full on confirmation on the daily BBWP. I think that's a good place for me to leave this one off. I want to take a second to wish you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.